Díagaibh go léir a cóide agus tá fáilte ród. Welcome to my story with me, Mary Honan, on Lear Media. Now, my special guest today is a wonderful woman. I've been really looking forward to interviewing her for quite a while now, and her name is Debbie Deegan. And she's a popular and sought after inspirational speaker. She's an award-winning charity worker, TEDx speaker, social entrepreneur, mentor, life coach, and author. She has worked for the past 21 years as CEO of the charity To Children with Love, helping disadvantaged children internationally to achieve their full potential. Now, as if that wasn't enough, Debbie, I feel inadequate. Hello, Debbie.
Hello. Next job interview I go to, Mary, I'm going to send you in advance with my CV.
I'll tell you, it's pretty spectacular, Debbie.
Thank you.
You had a very, very ordinary journey into it. You worked in, like I did, in sales and other jobs, and then one day you had this inspiration to that you wanted to make a difference in children's lives. Could you tell us how it first started for you, Debbie?
Yeah, I was actually an at-home mom at the time. I had been in retail management for years, and I had decided to stay at home and have my babies. And I think one part of me, I loved being at home. I loved being a mom. And I still love being a mom. It's my favorite thing in the world, actually. But I suppose I had the capacity, or I had I'm good at multitasking. And this really, I suppose, what happened was a whole set of energies came together at the one time, and I suppose an opportunity came towards me, and I just took it, and we took Chernobyl children, as it happened at the time. And that started my journey into where was this place, where was Russia. Now Chernobyl is not in Russia.
No.
And then I went to Russia a year later to kind of develop the story and see where the children had come from and all of that. And I had no idea about this country, Russia. I had no idea what it was like. It's just kind of this big scary place to us Westerners.
Yeah.
Full of scary people. And I walked through the gates of Hortolova Orphanage, and I read a book recently by the girl who wrote it's called The Big Magic.
Yeah.
It's written by the girl who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. And she talks about opportunities coming towards people in their lives at times, and they hit you like a lightning bolt. And Elizabeth Gilbert is the name of the author, actually. And she talks about some people in life some people grab the opportunities, some people let them go past and think, oh my God, that's too much trouble. Some people are scared of them, and yet the opportunity, this lightning bolt, when it comes towards you, can change the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I suppose maybe I am opportunistic, and which I don't know if that's a good word or a bad word, but I did feel when I stood in the orphanage on the first day, I felt like this is my place.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's almost like fate.
It was just like I felt this moment in time, I should be here.
Here, yeah.
I didn't know the country, I didn't know the language, I didn't realize how difficult it was to try and achieve things working under civil servants. So I had no idea. So in a way, my naivety was a good thing. And because I think if I had known then what I know now, I'm not sure I would have started with the same gusto. But I like solving problems. And the bigger the problem for me, the better. So and I've always been like that, and I'm still like that, even though I'm finished in the charity business now. But I do like huge unsolvable problems, and I like finding ways around them. And so the first day I stood in that orphanage, and the children were all around me, starting at age 6 up to age 18. And the big ones they looked like kind of prisoners, shaved heads, tattoos, missing teeth. With no working bathrooms. It was -30. There was about a meter of snow. an extraordinary visual, just the whole thing. It was like going back into, for me, it was like going back in time into like a Second World War movie or something.
Yeah.
I'd never seen an orphanage before, and we didn't have them in Ireland. Um, and I just couldn't get over the loneliness and the silence of the children, and the squalor, and the
Deprivation.
sense of loss from the children, the sadness in the eyes of the little ones, particularly. The big ones were tougher nuts to crack, but the little ones were needy. Mama, 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 mama. They learn this word when they see Westerners because they're hoping you'll adopt them. And we were not an adoption agency. We never did an adoption. We were never about money and adoption, because adoption is about money, and in a lot of cases. And so I decided the first week I was there, that's it. I met a little girl that I had my arms around the day I was leaving, and I made a promise to her that I would be back. And I just was overwhelmed by the whole thing. I came home to Ireland then. I was in my mid-30s at the time. I came home to Ireland, crying, whinging. I had young children. What am I going to do? How am I going to manage this?
Yeah.
How will I ever go back to Russia? I had no money. I didn't have family money. Like, I was an ordinary person. And so I thought, okay, like I sat down with my nearest and dearest friends and made a decision. Let's try and get on the Late Late Show. And I rang RTE, and unbelievably, Pat Kenny actually took my call and put me on the Saturday night. And I spoke. He said to me before I went on, like, you know, have you any media training? No, like, blah, 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 blah. And he said, are you able to talk? And I said, well, I can definitely talk. And so I went on that Saturday night, and really there was a massive reaction from it. And then a month after that, the Sunday Independent came out with me to Russia on my second trip, and did a huge article, very emotional article, written by a woman called Mary O'Sullivan, and a huge double page, dramatic photographs, and beautifully written piece, magnificently emotional piece. And we were just in the right place at the right time. The Celtic Tiger was starting, and I didn't know how to run a charity. I had no idea. I had no training in that area. So, but what I would have a skill at doing is getting very good people around me.
Yeah.
And so I got an accountant from day one that was rigid and ruthless, and he watched every single move that we made. And we never needed a lawyer in our 25 years. I brought some business people on board, but generally I brought on people that I knew had a vision for really, really quality childcare. And we wanted these children raised as, we had this dreamy vision that we wanted these children raised like family children. So whatever a family child had, we felt these children should have it. So I knocked on the door of one of the biggest prisons in Ireland, and the deputy director there, I wanted them on board because I knew that the prisoners were really helpful about making stuff and all that. And when I met the deputy director, I knew that I needed him on board because he was a big systems person.
Yeah.
And the civil servant, and I am the least civil servant person on God's earth. And I don't like conformity. I don't like things, or I don't like big systems written. But of course, he thrived on paper. And so I took him out with me. Eventually, I convinced him to go out with me. It took me about a year to convince him to get on a plane. And so he came out, and really his systems, like, I knew I needed clean heads. I knew I needed no lice. I knew I needed clean beds. I knew we needed working toilets, and I needed psychological support out there for the kids. I knew all the things I needed. I didn't know how to go about finding it and getting it. So I put together a whole team of brains that did know how to do it. And I am relentless. So when I, like, people, like, I would be relentless if I want something. So at meetings, people would be dropping like flies, and I would still be talking about the fact that they don't have enough shampoo. I do want pink buildings. I do want pink flowery tiles in the girls' toilets, things that never existed in an orphanage before, because in Russia the colors are all kind of
muted and dark,
mint green, dull green, vet surgery green, and brown, and so the whole country is painted the same colors. And I wanted pink and blues and yellows, and I wanted the children to design it. And that's exactly what we did. So we designed one of the best orphanages in the world, and the children did it with us.
I remember you saying, or I read where you said that some of the colors that they came up with and some of the designs they came up with were absolutely horrific, but they were still their choices.
Exactly. So we didn't mind. I mean, they wanted huge, big, gaudy chandeliers in their bedrooms, like plastic ones, those kind of like, and they're like the really cheap, nasty ones. And so we got them for them, and anything they wanted. They built their own palace, and the children it was just like a dream for the kids that suddenly dreams were coming true. And so we started with everything. Initially it was a rebuild, which it's not PC now to rebuild orphanages because we don't want more orphanages in our world. But it was PC then, and the EU had given us funding. And so I definitely wanted the best orphanage I could find, with the most magnificent library. We put in a hairdressing salon, we put in an amazing kitchen, fantastic life skills room. We brought over experts from the prison service who were all trainers, and they were training our staff over there. They were, but now hundreds of people traveled with me over the 25 years, if not thousands actually. But every person had a very strategic role. I'm very intolerant of people that waste time and want to just visit an orphanage so that they look good.
Yeah. And there's plenty of those.
There still is plenty of those, and they want to tell their friends they've been in an orphanage and done good, but so you have to root them out, because a lot of people are drawn to your organization because they just want to, can I come with you? I've always wanted to see Russia. I'm not interested in trying.
Can I ask you, Debbie, because I've never been to Russia, though I have friends there. I'm involved in Irish dancing, and I have colleagues who live in Russia now currently and are Russian. But, given the current situation, I would imagine that getting into the country is difficult, and therefore children who would need support, it's difficult to get to them, or would I be incorrect? I'm just thinking all the time that I've known of you, I've been thinking, in this current situation, I've been thinking, my God, it must be so difficult for young children, especially children in orphanages, to get outside support when nobody is allowed out of the country, or nobody seems to be allowed in. Would I be correct? And what would be the difficulties? Would you experience any difficulties now, or would you imagine that there are any difficulties with getting help to children in orphanages over there?
In Russia, you mean, obviously?
Yeah.
Well, we closed our organization. We decided after 25 years we were closing, that we had done what we set out to do. So the children that we went in, we started off with 250 children, and then that grew, and then we found all of their siblings, which took us about 5 years. And we didn't bring them to our orphanage because we didn't have the space. And then we had more and more come. Every time 20 left, like another 50 arrived. And the numbers were huge at that point, and the place was growing and growing. And so we decided, so my original children that we started with, all going to college, which we wanted them to do, which they weren't allowed to do in the beginning, but we changed the rules out there so that they could go to colleges. They became teachers, doctors, lawyers. Amazing,
Debbie.
Absolutely amazing success. And thanks to the people that were on my team, both Russians and Irish, I might add, not just Irish.
Yeah.
Amazing Russian staff over there as well. And
you also trained every one of them in, didn't you?
We did.
You trained those local people.
We did train local people, but actually Russians are so highly educated. They're all academics.
Yeah.
So you've got you have a huge wealth of knowledge around childcare. It might not be it might not blend with our idea of childcare. They're more formal. They're much more, they measure children by their level of education. There's no holistic measurements. If a child isn't an A, then there's a problem. Why is he a B or a C? Rather than, so they talk about children in that way. But so we decided that our children had their own children, and then in turn, we were nearly going into grandparent stages. And so I just felt after 25 years, we've done our job. And so we made a decision 10 months ago to close. It was just incredibly fortuitous that we closed the week of the war started, because we wouldn't have been able to fundraise, or because people obviously became very anti-Russian and wouldn't have supported what we were doing. And I understand why, because we were all watching horror stories unfolding on the TV with the Ukrainians, and the Russians were the bad guys.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, Russian people themselves are, it's very hard for me to watch it sometimes, because I have so many huge relationships with Russian people. And so we had enough money left in our bank account to send money out there to the end of this year. And so we're still helping children at the moment, even though the banks are completely closed. There's no transferring of funds.
That's it, yeah.
So, but we did get money out there before the war, just literally the week before the sanctions. And so we had enough money on the ground to keep everything ticking over till the end of the year. And we'd asked people to help us out towards the end with like a legacy fund, so that the children wouldn't feel we'd completely disappeared, because we'd been in their life for so long that they look on us as their parents.
Yeah, this, Debbie, is what I worry about, because there's child victims, I suppose, on all sides. And I mean, my research was about childhood in war. And there's always, for every child on this side that's a victim, there's also a child on this side. And if you close the borders and prevent these children from getting out, or people going in and helping them, then those children who have nothing to do with a war become victims themselves. And I've wondered what is happening the orphans in Russia, because nobody is, I suppose, looking on Russia as having victims in their country. Do you know? Of
course, they have victims in the country. I mean, they've about 100,000 orphans in their system when we finished up. But the state, they're fed and watered. They have 3 meals a day. Love would be in very short supply in their life.
Yeah.
You don't find love in children's institutions. It's something that doesn't exist in children's. It can't exist, because staff are all coming and going, and they learn how to be boundaried. So the children in general. So this is why institutions are bad places. Fostering has come in Russia. It's not very successful, because everybody lives in a 1 or 2 bedroom flat.
Yes.
So people don't really want to foster, because the children that they're fostering is living in their living room or in their bedroom. Unfortunately, a lot of people would have fostered for financial reasons, but they did the same in Ireland. When we started fostering 50 years ago, farmers were fostering kids to use them on their farms and to all that sort of thing. It was very, very broken system, and it took a long time to get it to where it even is today. But Russia only started fostering about 10 years ago, and they did make the same mistakes as we made in the beginning, by letting people foster just for the state were paying people.
Yeah.
People were doing it just for money, not for the love of children in many cases.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, the children over there. Now we had a meeting last night, my old team, because we had a lot to talk about, and we WhatsApped like some of our Russians into it, to talk to them about different children, different things. So I'm very much still in the lives of all of the children, as are my whole team.
Good.
So we're on WhatsApp, we're on Telegram, we're on Instagram, we're on, even though their Facebook has been closed down, and that we still can work our way around that. So we still have a full connection with our team out there and with our children. And we just funded something there recently. I think it was an orphanage director asked for something small. It was €60 or something. And so we're able to pay small stuff for the rest of the year. If I had my choice, I would go back. I'd go back to Russia at the moment. I'd like to travel at the moment. If I could, I'd go. My orphanages are all, it is the reason I'm quite sure, I have no doubt the Russians would allow me in and welcome me in. The journey is arduous at the moment because there's no direct flights.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Very expensive. And so I'd be going to Helsinki. I'd be getting a train from Finland into St. Petersburg. I'm about 20 hours from there by train. It's nearly an impossible journey. And then with just going in, does it make me look like I'm supporting Russia? if I'm there, if I'm seen to be there, but at the same time, I'm supporting the children.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's exactly. I
I'm not,
agree 100% with you, Debbie.
you know,
The
I
key.
am anti-war. I am anti-war, and I don't support the war. I don't support the fact that anybody drove tanks over a line into a sovereign country like Ukraine.
Absolutely.
But I'm anti-war. But would I go in the morning if I had the money? I probably would, because I think everybody knows that I'm just pro-children and that I'm not political. I suppose the most political thing I probably did over there was meet Putin. I'm sure you'll
That's
probably.
what I was going to actually ask you about. Imagine sitting next to the Russian Orthodox Pope, and then being told President Putin will be sitting to your right. I mean, imagine the shock of that, being sitting beside any president, but one that is so present. So he was always fairly present in the public domain, more than many presidents who you probably never heard of. Everyone heard of Putin.
Yes, and yeah, in a scary way. In a scary way, usually.
Scary way.
I mean, I'd worked under his government for 25 years, and that the Department of Education were my bosses really in Russia, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't really. I had a big relationship with my Department of Education, and they were certainly very, very, very supportive and very easy to deal with. And I mean, we had nothing but 25 years of incredible, wonderful experiences in Russia. Wonderful food, wonderful hospitality, people on like absolutely crap salaries, like $50 a week, would
Yeah.
bring you into their homes and would have a banquet out on the table of food that they had pickled, potatoes that they had pickled, apple tarts they'd made, tomatoes they'd grown, I mean, honey from their bees. And you'd have this banquet on the table from somebody who had no money,
I
because
know.
might know that there was a team of Irish in the orphanage and we were all starved, like we were all hungry. And so you'd be invited to this little cottage in the forest by somebody who'd be just, they're so incredibly welcoming and hospitable. And we really didn't have hardly a negative experience in 25 years. And I mean, of course, Putin's people were watching me. I mean, Putin's people watch everybody.
Yeah.
So they have this kind of theory that they inform themselves with all information, and then being informed is like being armed. They have this theory about that. And so it's a kind of real Russian theory. And but I didn't care if they listened to our phones, read my emails. Sure, what had I got to hide? We were talking about children's problems for 25 years. We would bore people to death about children's problems, and we never talked about anything else, only
Yeah.
children's. So we really weren't interesting people. And so I mean, he left us alone. He knew we were not political, and he knew we weren't religious. I'm not religious at all. And so I mean, there was
Is
loads
that
of.
a problem there, Debbie? If had you been religious,
I'd say,
might that have been a problem?
I don't know really. I just have absolutely no faith in any organized church. I think they're probably as corrupt as anybody you can possibly find anywhere. And I mean, we know that from our own experience in Ireland and the Vatican, etc. You couldn't find a more corrupt organization, I'd say, over the years. And so, like, it's I'm not sure you can throw stones and look at Russians and say that they're so corrupt. I mean, I've been watching charities in Ireland over the last 10 years stealing
Yeah.
7 grand,
Yeah.
800,
Yeah.
4 million, like, and yet we throw stones at other people and call them all corrupt.
It's
And
because they're different, and people are afraid of difference, and people are suspicious.
yes, and I mean, of course it's corrupt out there. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just
Yeah.
saying we can throw stones, is what I'm saying. But what if I religious? I don't know if it had effect. There was Baptists going around on buses slamming around Bibles everywhere, and Baptists were going in to adopt children quite a lot from America. And they would go in and they'd read their Bible passages or whatever it is people read out of the Bible. And it was interesting just to watch. Like, they would come in, they would read Bible stuff, and then invariably they would go, because the reason they came into orphanages was because there was no religion really in Russia at all. The church, after communism, the church had really faded away over there.
Yeah.
And so religions like Baptists found the children would be perfect fodder to brainwash with their
Ideology.
And so it made my blood boil when I'd see a Baptist bus arriving in so that they could read orphan children Bible stories and then feck off. Like, why the hell would you? I mean, I just couldn't understand why they. So
it's the definition of proselytization, you know, going from door to door, preaching, preaching religion and that. But a cousin of mine actually adopted 2 children from Romania. She couldn't have any children, and she went over for a little girl. And her husband was in the hotel getting their passports, and a little boy pulled on her skirt and called her mama. And the little boy, she rang her husband and said, hurry on back. She says, I'm taking 2. So she took Stephen and Terry, and she reared them. They ended up moving to America. But when you said about the children all saying mama and hoping to be adopted, that's what Stephen did. He just pulled on her skirt and said mama, and couldn't let him.
Yeah, I mean, I understand how it all works, and the children are in many cases set up to do that because the staff want them out of the orphanages and want them adopted. So they do play up to Westerners from that point of view. Mama, papa, papa, all this business. I was in Romania. I saw the same thing happening. And I mean, the kids are just desperate for love. They'll do anything. They've been told by their carers, like, if you're nice to the Westerners when they come in, they might take you home with them to their big house, you know.
But the older girls and the older orphans were very reluctant to be nice, weren't they? They were very distant when you met them. They were very guarded.
They were very guarded because they'd been
through so much.
For 18 years of their life without a single person ever telling them they were beautiful or that they'd done well in school or brushing their hair for them or taking a photograph of them and telling them how lovely they looked. That these children had been through a hellish childhood. And now the one thing in all of our years we did look out for over there again and again and again, even with our medical team we brought out with us, we never saw a trace of sexual abuse anywhere. And we were very aware of it because all the stories were breaking in Ireland that it was in every institution. But the difference was in Irish institutions, we had religious running them and the abuse was coming from the religious. Whereas in Russia, we didn't have religious in the orphanages. The orphanages are run by the state.
Yeah.
State staff, so we didn't have pervert priests in any of our institutions, which was a blessing. And we didn't. So that was something that was just, if anything, the only abuse would have been child to child, you know, bullying with the older boys because it was the survival of the fittest, you know?
Yeah.
And this is why institutions are such bad places. They're like prisons, really. The children can't leave. They've committed.
That's what it is. I mean, when you talk about the toys all piled high inside in one room and none of them allowed play with them, that just broke me.
Like in most orphanages around the world, I mean, I've been to orphanages in different. Anytime I go abroad and I can get to an orphanage, I go because I'm interested in the subject matter. So I mean, you know, in holidays I've been on, I've spent time in orphanages, Thailand and different places. And they put out toys when the tourists are coming, and they put the toys back away when the tourists are coming. Yeah. People think that there's toys on the floor all the time. There isn't, because it's a different system. It's not out of cruelty they're doing it. Those women are responsible for those toys. And if there's like a piece of Lego missing at the end of the week when she's doing her inventory, then the piece of Lego, the cost of it comes out of her wages. So it's easier not to put the toys out because the children just break them and you steal them and all the rest of it. So there's a reason why the women don't let them play with the toys. It's because it's just the system is not set up that way. But I mean, we had the most magnificent children, but you know, I can't describe to them how magnificent the children were that we worked with. They're all still a part of my life, completely and utterly.
I was looking at one little girl that she's a grown-up girl now that you introduced at your TED Talk, and I'll include a little piece of your TED Talk in this interview. But it was lovely to see her come back as an older person and having been educated and having had a great life thanks to not just people going out and helping, but people going out and showing love. That's the more important thing. You can survive anything if you know that somebody loves you. I mean, people I've interviewed, many survivors of genocide, the Holocaust, Sudanese death penalty, everything. All of them said the one thing that kept them going without fail was hope. And as long as you had hope, and there's nothing that gives you more hope than knowing that somebody like Debbie Deegan is going to come and that someone like Debbie Deegan loves me. And that gets them through another day.
It did. I agree with you. And so we had many Debbie Deegans, I suppose, that we'd such a huge team. And so different children, we had volunteers were living out there for 15 years, Irish volunteers and Russians, and living in the orphanage. And it was just an extraordinary experience for the Irish. But like some of the children liked quieter Irish, some of them liked the men, some of them liked, the boys liked the men, of course, for the football and that. Basketball, we brought out black basketball players, hilarious experience because they never seen black skin before. And so that was like we took aliens.
Oh, yes, you'd never think of that. Yeah, amazing.
So they've never seen black skin. Russia's a very white country. And because it was closed for so long with the Iron Curtain.
Yeah.
And so it was so interesting to bring out a 6'6" black man with dreadlocks in his hair. And the kids were fascinated. They were pulling up his shorts to see did the black go all the way up, and like they were just completely fascinated. And he's a magnificent person.
Kind of like Marion Margulies on Graham Norton when she saw what's his name? I can't think of his name now, but she looked and she said, you know, you're the only black man I've ever met. And she's looking up into his eyes. And by the end of the show, the two of them have their arms wrapped around each other. It's just, you should look it up on YouTube. It's hilarious. You're the only black person I've ever spoken to.
So no, Jerome Westbrook was our token black person, but he was a fantastic person. He went out a few times afterwards and ran very serious basketball camps out there. But we had tragedies along the way. I mean, it wasn't all. I mean, we built the most magnificent children's home on earth. I've no doubt about that. And we have children's testimonies to prove that. But you know, we had tragedy along the way. We had quite a lot of. Orphanage life is very hard on children, so we had I think we buried 3 or 4 children in 1 year. We buried another 3 or 4 the following year, and an orphan's funeral is a very sad thing because you don't have anybody at the funeral, and so we had they might have been they were accidental deaths. And one little girl got into a car one night to try and stay warm. She had left the orphanage and she shouldn't have, and she turned on the ignition and they fumigated 4 of them. And then another little boy was playing on the train tracks and he was completely fried by the train tracks. And I flew out actually when I knew, and I sat with them for they didn't think he'd last the night. And I decided to fly out and try and get there before he died, because I knew what the burns wards were like. They're like non-existent medication at the time. And I sat beside his bed. It took him 7 days to die. And it was a horrific experience, but it really was a horrific experience. And he left his little sister behind, and before he died he thought he was in trouble with me. When he saw me coming into the ward, he could barely speak. His mouth, he was black from his mouth down, but for some strange reason the top of his head was okay, and he could mutter some words, but he thought he was in trouble when he saw me coming. And he was dying at that point, and he asked me to mind his little sister.
How old was he?
Misha was about 12 when he died, and she was about 8. So we were left with her, and so we kind of did a wraparound program with her then, because I'd made a promise to him.
Debbie, how do you do it and not want to adopt every one of them? I'm sure that it you know.
What am I going to do? Bring 2,000 children home to?
No, I know, but in your heart, it's you know, I'd be looking and I'd be thinking.
We literally did adopt every one of them. We just didn't do it in Ireland. We literally created probably the biggest family in the world.
Yeah.
I just didn't do any of the paperwork. I just decided with my team that it was like a massive family. So we literally I have no interest in bringing any of them home to Ireland. The health board here had made a complete and utter complete horlicks of the adoption
Oh,
system.
now, come on, seriously, you're surely not dissing the Irish government. Lord, what they're doing at the moment is it's just beggars belief. I mean, they've taken in 40,000 Ukrainians, and God love them, half of them are sleeping in Dublin airport.
All about it because I'm working with Ukrainians at the moment, so I'm in the thick of that actually at the moment. But so I know exactly what's going on, and if you were to start me on that subject now today, you might be sorry. But I had a conversation with my own team last night about the fact that we achieved so much in Russia in 25 years that I've never seen so many stumbling blocks in government until I came here, till I started actually turning I never looked at Ireland for 25 years. I mean, our adoption system was a joke in Ireland, an absolute joke. I mean, couples that hadn't babies had to wait for 4 or 5 years for an assessment. And then the assessments were highly inappropriate. They had to change all the language in the assessments. It was
I was talking to a woman the other day, and she said she was hoping to try. I said to her, I'd put you in contact with her, and she was to come on with me today, but forgot about so it's for next Wednesday. But she wanted to foster Irish children before, and the ropes she had to run through in this country, asking her about her private life, her sex life with her husband, everything, very personal details. And yet now she's fostering a 10-year-old Ukrainian child who came over to this country on her own without parents. The father's in the army, the mother's in the Red Cross, or she's working on the line, and the children are in different countries. Now, you can't tell me, as somebody who's this has been my life, about children in wartime, the effects that must have on that child coming into this country, a 10-year-old child without a parent, not speaking a language, okay, being with a wonderful family. The government haven't even come forward and given them the children's allowance that they were supposed to be getting, to mind the child, to mind the child, or send the child for education or anything like that. And it just feels like a complete letdown to these people for Leo Varadkar to come on today and say there's going to be no limit to the amount of Ukrainians coming into the country. Now, that's all fantastic. We have to give compassion and bring people in. But God, where are those people? They're being put into a camp, a military camp. That's inhumane.
Well, yesterday they were shown the carpet in the airport and told to sleep on it, and they had no water. They had no water. Like, I don't understand the management of that. Everybody knew they were coming. Why was there no water? Why was there no sandwiches for them when they arrived? Like, to be honest with you, this business of no cap is ridiculous. We're not in a position in Ireland to have no cap. It's just
We're not. I
mean, I've huge sympathy for these people. I know they're coming from towns and cities that have been bombed. They're not all coming from towns and cities that have been bombed. But no cap is a joke. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's because clearly we're not managing it. I spoke to a girl today very distressed girl today, who her landlady isn't happy with the fact she's a child running around the house. The girl came in 2 months ago from Kyiv, and she brought her child with her, and the child is running around the house, and the landlady wants the child kept in a small bedroom, and he's 3, I think, and the landlady wants her out, and so they rang City West. There's nowhere it's full.
City West is jam full.
They said, sorry, no, we're not taking her in. So now the landlady's told her that she's going to drive her to the airport on Monday and leave her there.
So, as far as I can see, our government has tried to create this impression of, aren't we great? We're going to take in as many as we like. Leo Varadkar said today that there's over a million in Poland. Well, Poland's a bigger country than Ireland. And there's a housing crisis here in this country. There's mothers and children, and mothers and fathers and children living in hotels forever. and without the potential of ever getting a home. And yes, I'm all for, I mean, I'd be the first to say we should be bringing in people who are refugees and people who are in dire need of dire straits. But you have to be logical. You can only bring in the amount that you can actually house and feed. I mean, these people are left inside a military, a World War I military camp.
I know, I've seen it.
It's an insult.
I know, I totally agree with you. I've seen it. I've seen it all. I've seen it all here. I've just decided I'm trying to stay out of it nearly. I've had 25 years in Russia of like highly emotive years of broken children's lives. And so we retired out of our organization in February and closed it all down. I mean, closing down a charity is really hard work. It's emotionally difficult as well as, I mean, we'd no debts, we didn't owe anybody anything. We didn't have, we ran it perfectly for 25 years. So that was all easy. There was no scandals. We didn't have, we'd never a court case. So we'd done everything by the book and perfectly. And so that end of it was really easy, but the emotional closure of it was really, really difficult for me.
That's what I would find very difficult, because you've invested more than your time. You've invested yourself.
I didn't turn my phone off for 25 years unless I was on an aircraft. Other than that, my phone was switched on Christmas Day, 24/7. I never turned it off. So if a child needed me, then, I mean, Sasha, for example, who is on my TEDx talk, when she comes on the stage at the end, I asked Ted, would it be okay to bring her on, because I felt it was her story I was telling. But she phoned me about 10 years ago, maybe not 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, at 2:00 in the morning, and she was going to take an overdose, and she just didn't want to live anymore. And only that I don't ever turn my phone off. I got the message beep beep to listen, read the message, totally had to put because I couldn't call an ambulance. She was in Russia, I was in Dublin, and I couldn't call an ambulance because if you go into hospital as an overdose case over there, you'll get a stamp in your passport to say you're mentally not fit and you won't work again. So they don't deal with mental health the same way that we do. And so I had to get a team immediately to go to her house. We had to pump her, and I flew her into Dublin very shortly afterwards, and then she stayed. She came to live with me actually for 2 years. And we got her back on her feet, and then we trained her. She went back. She ran our organization for a few years. She's a magnificent girl, and but she's wonderful now. But it's been like so I've had 25 years of very, very serious human problems, and we adore, like, I loved every second of it. But I was only out of it, and then the Ukraine happened, and I thought, do I really want to get drawn right back into the eye of the storm again?
But there is that conundrum, though, Debbie, that the children that are over there are doubly victimized, if you like, now, because one, they're orphans, and two, they have a leader who the world currently despises, and they can't go anywhere or nothing can come in. So, as a human being and a person with humanity, my heart goes out to them, and I think that they're being ignored, the people that actually also need it. We think of oh, well, they're okay, and it's their leader that's causing it. And you see the Wimbledon preventing Russians from participating, and I'm saying, but what are you expecting these players to do? Are you expecting them to stand up and go against the president and say openly something that will actually put their families who are living in Russia in danger? Absolutely. What do you want from these people? I mean, isn't it enough that they say they're for peace? Shouldn't that be enough? Why doubly victimize them by preventing them from playing?
Well, I suppose the reasoning behind that is to try and get the people to rise up. I think that's why they do this. But I mean, the sanctions and the banking and all that, I mean, it's and the increase in the price of living over there crushes my friends first before it ever hits an oligarch.
That's it, you see, that's it.
The oligarchs that lost his big yacht, he has another yacht down the road, and next year he'll have another yacht down the road.
They're not
Whereas
affected at all.
my poor ones are like their mortgages have gone up, their food prices have trebled in the shops, and who does that hit hardest? Only the people at the bottom,
I saw a woman one day saying on a social media site, it's a anonymous one, and they were saying, "Oh, everyone in Russia is an oligarch," and she said, "I'm earning $200 a month, and I'm trying to keep my child," she said, "in an activity."
I think 1 or 2% of the population are oligarchs, so she definitely didn't do her homework on that statistic.
Yeah.
98% would probably be strong.
$200 is what she was earning a week.
That would be average.
And she was trying to keep herself keep her child involved in something that they were being prevented from being in and competing in because of the actions of their president.
I do feel sorry. I mean, some of them are listening to propaganda. We're also listening to propaganda over here. Like, I mean, look at Fox News, just churns out, in fact, stuff that isn't factual all the time. So it's hard. Some of them do just listen to Russian propaganda all the time. And so they really believe he's right, that there was Nazis that needed to be cleansed out of Ukraine. And some of them believe this. A lot of them don't, and they're saying nothing. They're just keeping their heads down because what, as you say, what choice do they have? They can't speak out or they'll be locked up. If you say the word war now in Russia, you're locked up for 10 years or something. So I'm not sure. They do paint a picture here. That's very different to the reality on the ground over there. And
I think the media always take a simplistic view of everything. It's either black or white. When they're, I mean, I just don't think sanctions are, for me, I always think that dialogue is the only thing that works. We had it here in the North. The only reason we had tenures, though it always is, the peace in the North, was because people like Mo Mowlam and John Major, Tony Blair, Bertie Ahern, people like that all got together, and Mo Mowlam went into a prison and spoke to people who should normally not speak to and ask, what can we do to make things different? And I just think the only way through to any peace anywhere is dialogue, not sanctions.
Well, I would agree with you, but I'm not an expert in that field. And I'm certain, it's not my area of expertise at all. So I suppose, what can we do? Only listen to these super duper economists and, World Health Organization and the UN and all of these giant organizations. We just have to put our trust and think that these people must know what they're doing. For me, it's all about dialogue. For me in Russia, it was all about diplomacy for 25 years. It's how we survived there. I sat at every table from the local mayor to the president of the country.
What was it like being beside President Putin? What was it like? Were you nervous talking to him, or were you strangely relaxed?
No, I wouldn't be intimidated easily now by anybody, really. And we were excited going in, because to get into the inner sanctum of the Kremlin is not very common. And so Tricia McGrath, a friend of mine, came with me. She's been in the organization with me for 25 years, and we were like buzzing going in. And we'd always avoided politics and politicians. But once we were called by the Kremlin to go in for this award, we decided, God, like, why not, And it was an honor, because it's like this huge award, nearly kind of from the people. It's a friendship award. And they only give out about 2 or 3 a year, and they give them to international people who have done work within their country. And in my case, it was in social change. And we went into this glittering room that was like Versailles Palace, and there was about 800 or 900 people having dinner. And I just thought we'd kind of be in a huge crowd, and we'd see him up on the stage, and we might get a snap of him or something, And but actually, they brought me to Trish to one table, they brought me to the head table, and the Pope was sitting there, their patriarch Kirill, and he was covered in head to toe in fancy diamonds and all kind of Pope stuff that I have no time for. And but I had to be polite, obviously, even though I'm not religious. Of course, I'd be polite to him. And he had been to Ireland fishing at one stage, and I chatted to him about that. And I was thinking, like, I wasn't quite sure how I could hold a 2-hour, 3-hour conversation with a pope, because I'm not, you know, it's not my favorite area.
Not your bag.
And Kirill is a very controversial character himself in Russia. And then the seat beside me, the food was all covered in plastic, all vacuum packed. And I was wondering why the food beside me was, I thought, I had no idea why. And I had my eye on why. I thought maybe the person had a separate dietary requirements or something.
Was he afraid you'd poison him?
And well, obviously they do this. I'd say they probably have to do that. And so then a big giant comes over to me with the wire coming out of his ears, you know, the curly wires, and Mrs. Deegan, the president of Russia, will be sitting to your right for dinner. They didn't tell me that in advance. And so, yeah, my knees knocked, I'd say, for maybe 2 seconds. You do have that mic. Oh my God, what am I going to talk to this man about? Do you have a dog? Where do you go on your holidays? Like, what level of conversation? And
you have the dog.
Like, what do you know, like, I was trying to think, what, you know, engage your brain.
What breed is he?
Yeah, like, you know, do you watch Netflix? Like, what do you talk to someone like that about?
You know? Seen Coronation Street.
Exactly. And now the only thing is, I because I love Russia, it's easy, and because I've such a good experience with Russian people in Russia, and because I'm always so pro-Russia from that point of view, hospitality, wonderful. The welcome, working with their government was made easy for me. Making strategic change in children's institutions was made easy for us over decades. And so I mean, I really couldn't sit there and say to him, listen, I need to talk to you about that bloody government of yours. I didn't have that experience.
Yes.
I had a genuinely positive experience in Russia for 25 years. And so I was happy to say that to him. But he is iconic. When he sits down beside you, you nearly feel like you're sitting beside, I don't mean a film star, but you've seen his face so often on telly.
That's what I said to you earlier. He is one of the most
iconic. He's iconic. And so his eyes are piercing, you know, and he's rigidly straight because he's a judo expert. And so his spine is rigidly straight. And so I was
how is his English? I presume his English is fluent. And that because I watch him in interviews, and he looks, and he decides, he pretends that he doesn't know how to answer, but really I feel that he's just waiting and thinking of his answer while they have to translate it into Russian.
Yes,
and
he speaks English, he speaks, I think, Italian, he speaks probably Spanish. Russian people are very clever people, and they speak multiple languages. Irish people are absolutely diabolical at languages.
They don't speak any languages, really, very few.
And so he very politely, I mean, there's no point in me saying that flames came out down his nostrils. They didn't. I can't paint him to be an evil person, because he wasn't that to me. I'd like to sit down with him now and talk to him. I did write to him since the war started. And I did tell him what I thought of his special operation. Because I felt...
Were you not worried that would affect the work you had done?
No, because it may not have been wise to do it, because I'm not supposed to interact politically with him, because I've always said I'm non-political. And I wanted to remain that way, or you just get dragged into the shit.
I think if you're Irish, you are political by your birthright. I
felt I had, to be honest, I felt if this man respects me enough to give me one of the most prestigious awards in Russia, then I felt that he should respect me enough to read my thoughts on what I feel about this. I just felt like, I think when you say if I didn't write to him, then I would have been condoning what he did by my silence.
Yeah.
I felt I had no choice but to put pen to paper.
It's a very tenuous line that you're walking between. Do I remain silent? Because there is a very famous quote that evil happens when good men do nothing.
Exactly. And I never be that person. If I
can't.
evil being done, I will say something. And so I just felt I had to say what I had to say, and I had obviously I have an address and an email address. I because of my Kremlin medals and all that, we'd connections there that were organizing our trip for us and all that. So and so I had ways of getting it there. And I mean, I'm sure he didn't sweat over my little letter. I'm quite sure he didn't sweat over that. But at the same time, I had to say what I had to say. And maybe would it work against me if I ever go back to Russia? Would they lock me up because I did it? I don't know. Would I take the risk? I possibly would take the risk because I've children there that I've known all my adult life. And I would hope that I can go back. And I would hope that they would know that how I feel about their country and about their children. But
and that should supersede everything. I mean, if there's even a modicum of rationality in the man, he'll be able to say to himself, well, this woman has given her life for the children of Russia, for the orphans of Russia. And she has the courage of her conviction to speak. I just want to say that Debbie has received numerous awards, including the International Person of the Year, UNESCO Tolerance Award, WMB Social Entrepreneur Award, and most recently the Innovator of Change Award from the Eurasian Women's Forum. In 2018, she received the highest honor in Russia when she was awarded the Order of Friendship Award by President Vladimir Putin at a ceremony in the Kremlin. But you say that of all those awards, the Mammy Award is one of your favorites.
Well,
awards that the children give you.
Yes, I mean the children have given us, like, children in orphanages look for. They were so excited before all of our visits. I was there hundreds and hundreds of times, and so I was part of the furniture in the orphanage. But so when a big gang of Irish were arriving, the children would always get excited about making, like, knitting things and knitting gloves for the Irish, and making, wooden boxes, old-fashioned style Russian boxes. And on one occasion when I went in, they had kind of knitted these lanyards, and they'd made big cardboard gold medals like an Olympian would get, and it was for, like, the mother of their mother. I was being awarded the title of their mother because we genuinely had the biggest family in the world. And we were very proud of the children, and we still are, and now their own children are being born, and so we have the next generation.
But you set up the sister version of it here in Ireland.
We set up an organization called the Rising Tide in Ireland. So because school had approached me about the school in Dublin, I won't mention where the school is, but it's a DESH Band 1 school. Yeah. So they would have high disadvantage, I suppose, is the easiest way. Challenges social locally. They would have
inner city.
The children would have challenges growing up in their lives, very serious challenges. And so we decided to look in that direction. We decided to help the principal at one stage because we were well capable of fundraising, of something we were very good at. And so my world here was I wore two hats, really. My world in Ireland was a fundraising world. And then when I got on a plane, that hat came off and I was straight into childcare and rebuilding children. So I had a split personality for a very long time, and that I had to come home here, then forget about Russia, and then put on the glamorous ball gown, the false eyelashes, and go out and raise 100 grand at a ball.
Now, tell me how you managed to do that all and still hold down a marriage, and a successful marriage. Your husband must be just incredibly patient.
Well, I read something he wrote the other day. We made this magnificent album when we finished the charity. 5 of them we printed off. They cost a fortune. and my daughter put them together. It took her months, and there's hundreds of pages in it of magnificent photographs and magnificent words from people about our organization over the years. Mary McAleese, Michael D. Higgins, Mary Robinson. I'm talking about people, Brendan O'Connor, Marion Keyes, like everybody that we've touched off over the years. All the ambassadors in Russia, all the ambassadors in Ireland, and they all wrote notes in it. We asked them for just short notes, not gushing about me or anything, just about the organization and how they found us over the years. We wanted all warts kind of thing. And my husband put a note in it in his own handwriting in the book, and I just told the girls last night, he said that I definitely wasn't easy to live with, but it was worth it. So he's still here anyway. And but anyway, it certainly wasn't easy on a marriage, that's for sure, because really I was married to Russia for so long myself. The project consumed me. And usually it's men that are consumed that way with like a big project or a very big important job, and the man might have a wife at home doing all the housework and the cleaning and the laundry, and the men don't in general have to worry about
the equivalent to being a golf husband.
Absolutely. And but I wanted to be a mom. It was my priority to be there was no point in being a mother to orphans in Russia if I wasn't going to mind my own. So I was like, I did really make an effort to be at all parent teacher meetings, or be here for all their issues, be here for all birthdays, all that sort of thing. And then my own mother is literally an angel. She's an earth angel. So literally, as I stepped out the door, my mother stepped in my door. So the kids got their favorite foods, their favorite everything bought for them, spoiled.
Stay up all night.
Yeah, and so they never missed me. And my husband is very easy, laid back person, and also he was very committed to the Russian children. He knew them very well. He'd been to Russia with me. Some of the more difficult children came to live in our house in Ireland, and so he knew them extremely well. And so I had he had made that, he was as committed as I was. He just decided he'd be the person at home while I was the person there. So yeah, definitely not easy to be married to anybody that's consumed by
and consumed.
Very hard.
It is, but it's a remarkable journey, and I'm sure it's not ended, Debbie. I'm sure you're waiting for the moment that you can actually get back there again.
I am. I'm not. Yes, I will definitely go back if I can, and when it's appropriate. As I say, I can't go in and look like I'm supporting the system.
No.
Because I'm not, and at the moment I am working.
No one is, but you have to. When you're people like us, you and me, who for whom children and their safety and their care are paramount, you're always thinking, yes, there's one way of looking at it, but there's also the other way of looking at it. The children that are stuck in a country that can't get out, can't make a decision, can't do anything about what's happening, and yes, who's caring about them?
Yes, I am working with Ukrainian children at the moment as well, and I would wonder what's going on in Ukraine in orphanages too. I dread to think what's happening there.
Yeah,
but our charity was set up for Russia. It wasn't set up for Ukraine. It's now closed. We're officially closed. And so it's not like I'm going to rev it back up again. And but I would wonder, is there a task force needed to put Ukraine back together and do it properly? Because it before the war, I think Ukraine was the fourth most corrupt country in the world.
I'm looking at this particular woman that, as I said, I said I'd pass on her details to you. But when I look at her, and she was just handed over more or less a 10-year-old child without a mother or a father. And I know as a child, I was sent from Ireland to the UK. My dad lived in the UK, my mom in Ireland. And every time she got sick, I was put on a plane with a little badge that said Mary Honan. And I was picked up when I arrived at Heathrow by my grandmother and my father. And I had the benefit of both of speaking English, but a child that comes here with not a word of English, no mother, no father, and she's handed over, but yet they're more careful about if you want to foster an Irish child. And I just think there's so much room for not such good things happening when, in situations like that. We have to be very, very careful. And I mean, we have to be cognizant, I think, of the fact that just bringing a child to a country and giving them a place to stay doesn't help with their mental issues and the loneliness and the isolation and all the challenges that come with that, with being landed in a godforsaken country that's as cold as Ireland is, out in the Atlantic, and not a word of English, and living in a tent, probably on a World War II camp. It's just inhuman. It's more inhuman to bring 40,000 people in and just leave them to the elements, which is what I think is happening.
I mean, some of the people are being housed with obviously very good families.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long. And again, even that's temporary, because nobody knows. Like, you might want them in your house for 6 months, but then you might decide, I'd like to go back to my normal life. And then what happens to the family?
And then what happens? Yeah.
Where they're going to go? I just don't know I don't know that did anybody think this through. Maybe we're expecting much because it was unprecedented, as they say. Nobody expected it to happen. But at the same time, a task force should have been put in place, I think, on week one, with experts, like even people that are
mental health experts and child experts,
people that know about displaced people. All of this there should have been a task force put together, and we should have thrown money at salaries, I think, from that point of view, to have people sitting around that are all dedicated to all of the problems that are arising. Because I mean, as I say, I'm involved just in one story today, and the girl does not know where she's going to go next because her landlady wants her out. She's no idea where she's going to go tomorrow.
It was a knee-jerk reaction. People came along, and this lady I'm talking about is a very kind, very good person. And there are very good people who decided, for one reason or another, yes, I'd like to help. But then when it happened, and people came into their homes, they just didn't. After a while, they thought, I've had enough now. I've done enough I've done my bit. Now it's I like my home back to the way it was.
I understand that. I mean, I've had people staying in my house for 25 years, adults and children, and I found it very difficult.
Yeah.
Not a joy to share your somebody, or to share your bathroom with somebody. If you've got a big house and you don't see them, or you've got a basement and you can put them in it, give them their own bedrooms and bathrooms. But like, if you're waiting for somebody to come out of your bathroom in the morning before you go to work, and they're in there for half an hour in the shower, and you don't know these people, it's a very difficult thing to try and out. I mean, you do it with the best of intention, but I mean, I never had anybody staying in my house that I wasn't glad to see the end of them, ever. And we'd have a very hospitable, open house. But I've always been glad to see the end of anybody I had staying, because you want your space back. You want your house.
It's only human nature. We all want. I'm an only child of an only child, so I was used to my own space, and I loved people coming. But after a while, you really start to realize, Jesus, can I just have my own space? Or people, when they come to my house and they put on the television, my colleagues here in the station, they put on the television. I'm saying to them, look, I like silence. Can you just turn off the television and just have a bit of silence for a while? And you're taken out of your comfort zone when you bring in people who you can't really say these things to. You can't be as forthright with.
Well, don't forget, a lot of them they can't communicate. They're using Google Translate, and it's arseways. So some words are not translatable even, And then they have different cultural norms to our cultural norms. They're much stricter with their children than we would be. They would have their children doing hours of homework every night. We don't do that anymore. So there'd be two different ways of raising children in the one house. Like, it's definitely not an easy scenario. I don't know what's ahead. I mean, I just don't see enough people on the ground here solving the problems that are happening. And I just don't think the management team is big enough.
I think it's just, in an effort to be compassionate, I think what has been done is quite cruel, because it's the ultimate in cruelty, because you're giving people a sense of hope which I've said about, and that only to dash it the minute they come in and they find that they're sharing a space which is little more than ghettos, really, because when they're putting people all together in one block of hotels and or sharing spaces in a prison, former World War I camp, and they're all sharing the little beds inside it. It's no different than ghettoization of people, in my view. I think they would have been better taking less people and having them live in comfort.
I agree entirely. And I suppose there is the view, well, if your apartment block was about to be bombed, are you not better off in an army camp in Mosney or wherever the hell it is? And I suppose some people have that view, well, at least they're safe here. That is the argument. They're not going to be bombed here.
No, they're not going to be bombed, but
know,
where are they every day, day in and day out? They don't have the language, they don't have the finances, they're not set up in education yet. They don't have a proper place to sleep.
I know. I'm looking at it, staring in the face at the moment myself with certain families that I'm involved with, and I'm stunned at what we're doing here. Stunned. I think this business of no cap is ridiculous. Absolutely. In my humble,
there has to be a cap. And speaking as somebody from your experience, it speaks volumes. You really do need a cap.
I totally agree.
For humanitarian reasons, you need a cap.
I absolutely agree.
Because where there's huge amounts as well of people in small confined spaces, there's also illnesses, and that when people are all crammed together in small spaces with no hope of getting homes. I mean, there aren't homes for the Irish people.
I can't imagine how the mental health business is going to go with them. We've no psychologists here to deal with our own children's problems. I don't know how we're going to find people.
Well, I've decided to go back in September. I've applied for it to do counselling and psychotherapy. And because I looked at childhood under Nazism and I interview survivors of genocides, my area of focus will be survivors of forced deportation and that. Because I'm really, really strong on this. Nobody's thinking, they're thinking of the physical of it, but they've brought people into this country and they've just abandoned, in my view, they've just left them to their devices. I mean, to leave them in a hotel, an airport, sleeping on makeshift airbeds, it's just insane.
I agree.
Do you know? Well, Debbie Deegan, it's a great name, by the way. Very alliterative, Debbie Deegan. It's, if there was awards in this country like MBEs, OBEs, and BMEs, and you'd be certainly a DME, a Dame of the DBE, Dame of the British Empire, or Dame of the Irish Empire, a DIE.
Thank you very much.
But you have been given so many awards, and I don't think enough, really. But there's still loads of time.
There's still loads of time. Awards are not my driving force, but I suppose my mother has them all on her mantelpiece, so that's she pangs them all up. I've no real interest in them. But I mean, they're lovely to get, and they get you PR, and then the PR in turn gets you fundraising. So they have a very good purpose.
That's right. I interviewed Dame Helen Hyde, and she got her award. And actually, when she was getting her award, she said, "Do you realize?" She said, "I'm just a Jewish woman from South Africa. Have you got the right person?" But she said when she got it, it changed her whole life because she was able to get funding for the work she did.
Exactly. They're a means to an end. They are a means to an end, definitely. And there's no doubt about that. And even the prestige in Russia when we got it, once Putin, I managed to survive without him for 24 years there. But at the same time, when I got the medal from him, we were like royalty then once we went to big meetings or anything or conferences, because people had seen me on TV with him and knew that once you got his blessing, people then wanted to support your organization over there.
Yeah.
So I mean, the awards, the medals, or the glass statues and the stars and all the sort of things you get, they don't mean that much, but they are definitely a means to an end. And they're, of course, you're delighted.
Prestige.
They're prestigious, and some of them you're very, very honored to get, International Woman of the Year, blah, 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 all those kind of things. It's lovely. It's lovely you can write it up on your LinkedIn page,
That's it. And I can read it out.
Exactly.
Well, Shindera leis an chlár, that's the end of the show for today. Until the next time, Lacúnamh Day. But Wallam tu galertia Conna, Sonas agus Gra, I wish you peace, happiness, and love agus Gadeshiv Slán. Slán, Debbie.
Slán, thank you. Very good. Thank you.
Vladimir Putin was making big changes across Russia. He was a giant in everybody's head, his photograph on every wall. To us, it was like the Wizard of Oz. He was somebody in the distance to be afraid of. We'd no intentions of meeting him as long as we stayed off his yellow brick road. Until 12 months ago, I was doing a weekly shop in the supermarket and I got a telephone call from the Kremlin. We had just been awarded the highest award that can be given to a Western person for their work in Russia. And it was to be presented by Vladimir Putin himself. So I thought that was definitely we were actually extremely honored. And it was really, I was dying to have a look at him in the flesh, to be honest. So myself and my right hand for the last 20 years flew to Moscow. We arrived at the airport. We were greeted by the most stunning girl straight out of a James Bond movie, standing at a car sent by the president. We were whisked through the streets of Moscow, blue light flashing, the traffic parting like the Red Sea to let us through, directly into the inner sanctum of the Kremlin. As I was being brought to my seat, I thought about our children. I looked around me at the champagne, the caviar, the magnificent room. We had just come through 2 enormous golden doors. I knew for sure now we were in Oz. I took my seat. To my left, to my shock and horror, was the Russian Pope, the head of the Russian Orthodox Church. I wondered who had placed me beside him. The seat to my right was empty. I looked down at the porcelain plate in front of me, and I thought about all those plates piled high in the orphanage. I thought about Lilia and her red plate. I thought about Sasha, who told me she'd never been kissed before. I made a silent toast to our children. We had come from my kitchen table, and now we were sitting at the Kremlin table. I knocked back a vodka quickly to cope with the conversation with the Pope over lunch. But as I was doing that, I was tipped on the shoulder by a giant security man with the wire coming out of his ear and into his collar. He wanted to introduce me to the man who was going to be sitting to my right. I looked up, and looking down at me was the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin. Suddenly, the Pope was a very small problem. I literally forgot my own name. I didn't know what to do. I actually went into a kind of a blind panic because nobody had prepared me for this at all. After the initial blank, I then kind of thought, should I be chatty and friendly? Will I ask him, has he ever seen Gogglebox? Has he seen, does he know what Game of Thrones is? Where does he go on his holidays? What? Nobody prepared me for this. And in our country, it's easier to talk to presidents. They're less intimidating. I settled down, took my elbows off the table because I could hear my mother's voice from 3,000 miles away saying, don't put your elbows on the table. I settled down. And without being indiscreet, I have to say, he was cultured, patient, with my endless chatter. He was welcoming, informative. He speaks multiple languages. He was absolutely thankful to me for all the work we have done. And he wanted to reiterate again and again that we should all be concentrating on the things that bring us together rather than the things that separate us. I had one of the most powerful men in the world sitting beside me. I thought he'd stay a few minutes and then leg it because it was a huge, big PR event. Actually, he stayed for 2.5 hours. We chatted easily for 2.5 hours. No matter what your politics are, it is good to talk. That day he asked me to go up on the stage and talk to 100 million people on Russian TV. And my main message was that all children need a family and we need to see the end of orphanages all over our world. So, my magnificent team are still together 21 years on. My mother holds my house together when I'm not there. My children are the light of my life. Was I a desperate wife for the last 21 years? Absolutely. My husband was and still is an angel. And then there's you. If I was to give you one piece of advice, I might say don't ever go to a coffee morning because you could end up doing 20 years in a Russian forest. The TED people tell me that I'm allowed to make an ask for the charity. And much to the horror of my board, I'm not going to do that either, because I think we have bigger magic in the room today. We still have our programs in Russia, and we have a magnificent scholarship program in Ireland as well, with children with huge challenges in their lives, and we do need support. But to be honest, I really feel between us all, there's 1,000 people in this room today, and I would ask you all just to do one thing for me in honor of those children. I want you to think about just what can you do that's going to make our world a kinder place. That's my one ask to you all. Those children in that orphanage gave us their hearts. They trusted us with their futures. They changed their lives. They changed our lives. And I'm hoping that today their story might just touch your life. If you think about it, my story started with a kiss, and it went on to change the lives of thousands and thousands of children. And I couldn't stand here today without introducing you to the little girl who is no longer a little girl, Sash. I couldn't... This is Sasha, who's the little girl I told you at the beginning of our story, who had told me all those years ago that she'd never been kissed before. So I'd like to really end by saying that my one message to you all is, when you leave here today, please think, what is that one thing you can all do to make our world a better place? Keep your cross.
Thank you.